Challenger and Gray's monthly job report for June showed that AI was the #1 reason cited for layoffs. 40% of people were laid off for AI during the month of June, according to Challenger and Gray. But according to a new Gallup poll, we're seeing a different story. In today's video, we're going to cover some pretty startling statistics. And there was one statistic in particular that really shocked me, which was 25% of people that were laid off all had this one thing in common. And we're going to cover these couple things in today's video. But the one thing that also jumped out to me, another thing that jumped out to me, was that only 1% of employees gave the reason of AI is a reason they were fired. Only 1%. So only 1 out of 100 people said, yeah, I was replaced by AI, which is in stark contrast to what companies are saying and to what the Challenger and Gray study had shown. Now, that said, I take this piece of data with a grain of salt because I just have a hard time believing that employers and team leaders are going to employees and saying, hey, Jim, we don't need you anymore. We're replacing you with a robot. I just don't see that happening. I think there could be some potential liability and legal issues, lawsuits. But it's just not a good way to end things. I think typically if you're I don't know if you've ever laid anyone off before. I've laid people off before. And it's typically something that typically goes more along the lines of, we're just not a great fit anymore. We're moving on. We have different needs, so on and so forth. Or hopefully it's not something like, I've had to lay people off before because they just stopped doing their job, and that makes it easier, but it's always hard. Laying off people is always hard. And I did actually tell a colleague recently, or a team member recently, I said, listen, the stuff that you've been doing, I can actually do with AI just about as quickly as you can do it, and the quality is like almost there. So instead of paying you for 20 hours a week, maybe I'll pay you for 2 hours a week, and I'll just have you come in and clean up on the back end. So that is kind of a place where his job is being moved. Again, you're gonna have a hard time as a team lead going to Karen and saying, Karen, you're gone. We're bringing in Joey.ai. It's just gonna be a tough thing to do. Now, while there is some dissent, however, of how responsible AI is for layoffs, Gallup found, again, a shocking statistic on who makes up the 25% of layoffs. Again, we'll get there in a moment. We're also gonna look at some startling data in a moment as well, where it kind of shows a stark contrast about who's being laid off and how often they use AI. So we're gonna cover that also here in a moment. Anyway, going back, I want to hit up some other key points here in this quick video. By the way, if you're new here, smash like, smash subscribe, and bringing you a fresh video 6 days a week. According to the Gallup poll, 21% of US employees noted their company was firing workers. And this is nearly triple where we were at Q2 of 2022. So a lot of companies are doing layoffs. But at the same time, while these layoffs remain high, the workforce expansion is also high. 24% of workers reported hiring at their firm. So 21% of employers are laying people off, 24% are actually hiring. And, I get it. Sometimes companies say that we're hiring, but they're not really hiring, or they're hiring like a very, very specific type of person. Regardless, a good amount of companies seem to be hiring now, which is refreshing, as we saw Jerome Powell a few weeks ago saying that there was net zero new job creation. I believe that was the month of May. We don't like that. We want net new job creation. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, the majority of companies, 45% of companies, plan to keep their workforce size steady. So they're not really firing, they're not really hiring. They're just kind of like waiting and seeing what happens. That's what the majority of companies are doing right now. Now, again, this completely checks out. These narratives completely checks out with the story from a couple days ago, and I'll post a link to this video here, where companies are firing people for AI, but then realizing that they made a mistake. Again, we covered this video, I'll post a link to the video. So these companies are firing a bunch of people for AI, realizing that they made a mistake, that the AI can't actually fill in all those gaps, and then they need to go and hire people back. And typically when you're being hired back, your job description is not gonna be exactly the same. You'll probably be doing a lot of things that are similar to what you've been doing before, but now everything revolves around AI. Again, I'll talk to you in a moment. I'll share some numbers with you. But the reality is that if you're working in an organization and you're not using AI, you are much more likely to get laid off. You gotta be on the cutting edge of this stuff, guys. And just a quick side note, the other day I was reading a comment and someone said something to the effect that AI is evil. And guys, come on, AI is not evil. People will do evil things with AI, but AI itself is not evil. It's just a tool. It's just a computer. It's just a robot. It is not evil. It is not good. It is just a thing. And maybe I'll record an entire video on this, but we live in this world that's so bifurcated and isolated. We're very isolated. Again, more on isolation here in a moment. But there's a psychosis, I think, that's happening with people where they're so afraid and so angry that you're getting you're able to get kind of pushed around and manipulated, guys. AI is not evil. It is just a thing, okay? Anyway, federal workers are seeing big time layoffs. Nearly 38% of federal workers say their employers letting people go. State and local governments are about half, at 19%. And what we also see here is pretty shocking, come from the tech space. Tech is the number one place where layoffs are happening. 13% of workers noted they were in tech, which is double the 6% share of tech workers currently in the workforce. But here's the thing, here's the number, here is the stat that I thought was the most shocking, and that is that 25% of all laid off workers were fully remote. Fully remote. So 1 out of 4 workers was fully remote. What does that mean? It means that if you're working remotely, you're on the chopping block. You're right there, guys, 25%. I thought that was pretty stunning, but not surprising. Stunning, but not surprising, because as I've been preaching for months now, relationships matter now more than ever. The relationships that you have with people are going to directly correlate with the opportunities that you have. And, this is just the way that humans work. And I think the sooner you realize that the relationships that you have directly contribute to the opportunities that you get, the better off you'll be. And I have made this challenge often. I'm going to lay it out there again, guys. I'm going to put it out there. Next time you're in your car, next time you have a few minutes, pop open your phone and call someone you haven't spoken to a while and that you respect. This could be someone from high school. It could be a colleague at a previous place. It could be someone that you just kind of casually know. Just give them a call. See what they're doing. What are they excited about? What are they focused on? How are their wife and kids? You know what I'm saying? Any good movies they've seen? Just it doesn't need to be that serious, but those relationships matter, okay? And I just challenge you to do that, to put yourself out there and make it happen. It is very, very important. Because the reality is that when you're a remote worker, you're very isolated. You're not in a group. You can't just go out to lunch with Jim. You can't go watch the FIFA World Cup after work. Go USA, by the way, USA. We're gonna crush our group. Smash like if you feel me on that one. In any event, remote work is isolating, and it's also very difficult to attribute accountability. Okay, so it's just harder. It's just more difficult to be noticed for what you do when you're remote, and it's more difficult to make important connections with people that matter. The most important thing that you can be doing now, again, is fostering relationships. Get to know the decision makers. Don't skip meetings. Share emotional moments, not just remotely, but locally as well. Get involved in some groups, in some communities. There are skills that you have that are very, very valuable. Okay, and if you're watching a channel like this, you're in the top. I would say that the people that watch this channel are well above average on intelligence, income, and desire to be better. So pat yourself on the back there. You've got some skills, you've got some talents, you have things that the world needs. You're interested in AI, you're investing, you're owning equity, you're probably buying Bitcoin like me, which may be crazy, but I'm still doing it. Regardless, you have something to give, so get out there, meet people, join a church group. Join a local networking community. I was just playing basketball all morning this morning, and those relationships are gonna matter a lot, guys. You have the relationships lined up. The other day I got an opportunity that I did not expect, and it might bear fruit. It might become something huge for me. Why? Because I invited a guy over to have some brisket and watch the NBA finals, okay? So don't skip on By the way, that smoked brisket was so good, guys. I cannot wait to have a big event where everyone comes together and we're eating smoked brisket and barbecue. Cannot wait for that. Regardless, get out there. You don't know what the future holds. Now, getting back to some of the stats here, because I think there's another stat here. While only 1% of worker layoffs were attributed to AI, which again, I suspect is low. I think a lot of people were probably told something like, you're not a cultural fit anymore, when in reality, like, they're replacing Karen with an AI HR bot. What I found interesting were that laid off workers are much more likely to be non-users of AI. Currently employed workers are 27% more likely to be frequent users of AI, 27%. So what does that tell us? That tells us that if you want to be working in a company, if you want to be working with other human beings, you need to have good relationships. You have to have a foundational relationship with people. And you also need to be using AI. You need to be learning AI. I think, guys, we've been preaching this on the channel, guys. We've been preaching this on the channel. Relationships, AI, be public. Be public. Don't just sit in your corner and use AI. Be public with what you're doing. Just yesterday, and I'll close here. Just yesterday, I shared a video on how I used AI to build out an entire framework and funnel for how I built my YouTube channel up to 20,000 subs and 300 views per month and thousands of dollars in AdSense and sponsorships and public speaking opportunities. And I don't say this to brag. This took a lot of time and effort to get here. But by being public, and I would encourage you to go watch yesterday's video, I show you exactly how I use Claude Cowork to build it all out. And to just stop there, guys, I was using Claude Cowork for all kinds of things yesterday. I had it do an assessment of an entire Google SEO ad campaign, and then it recommended fixes, and I said, go ahead and execute the fixes. So I could go, maybe I'll go into more detail on something like that at a later date on how I'm using Claude Cowork to lower customer acquisition costs for clients, but maybe that's a different topic. Regardless, relationships matter, using AI in your work matters, being public with it matters. All right, boys, that's all I got for you today. Make it a great day. Go check out yesterday's video where I explain exactly how I'm using Claude Cowork to scale the channel. And I hope you enjoy. Guys, have a great Sunday. I'll see you back on Monday. Peace.